Right. We are on live, Maggie. Welcome. Welcome to Business Wellness Wisdom. And so today, listeners, I would like to introduce my guest, Maggie Ostara. And we're talking about leadership in today's times. And all of you might, those of you listening would probably most likely agree with me that we do need, an embodiment of excellent communication and leadership, moving our world forward and creating beyond what is the known. And Maggie, I can't think of a better person to talk to us about this than Maggie. So let me tell you a little bit about Maggie. So Maggie left her prestigious job as a director of women's and gender studies at Columbia University when she realized that she was not meant to work for anyone else. She now knows that this is part of her human design. And that is another amazing asset that Maggie brings onto our platform, is the role of the exquisite and important role of human design in today's moving on and creation. We are all amazing beings, and I can't think of a better person to talk about this than Maggie. Since then, she has gone on to create 4 successful businesses, growing more than a couple of $1 million. I mean, that is it's not so much about the money. It's about the extent of your experience and your expertise and what you bring into our world as a leader. And it's in the healing arts as a clarity breathwork practitioner and trainer, and a high-end soul-inspired business coach, and an online marketing and education expert. And now also as a certified human design specialist. Maggie's multiply published author and a rousing public speaker. I am so blessed to have her here, and is a beloved teacher and highly intuitive, skilled mentor coach. When they work with her, Maggie's clients deepen their sense of destiny and true value and live their own definitions of success. She has served tens of thousands of students and hundreds of clients all over the world through her online programs. She lives in a small town in Northern California with her black feline familiar and NB teenager. You'd have to explain about that. Oh, and she paints and dances too. Oh, what else have you got to share with us? Maggie, welcome. So tell us more about feminine sovereignty and leadership in today's world, creating.
Well, Rebeccah, I want to just start out by thanking you for inviting me to come and share today. I know that you have been commenting on my videos for some time. I always appreciate when I see you coming in on YouTube and letting me know how my videos have been meaningful for you. I really appreciate that. I want you to know that, because it's kind of a funny thing to create content and put it out in the world. And you always wonder how it lands for people, right? And I mean, and my YouTube channel is growing quite a bit, so I guess I'm doing okay. But the comments, right, really mean a lot to me, because then I'm like, oh, okay, I get how this is landing for people. So you've actually been pretty consistent about doing that, and I want to appreciate you for that and acknowledge you for that. Yeah. So feminine sovereignty is a body of work that has grown out of my last 2+ decades of work in the personal growth world and in how it connects to the healing arts and also to our money consciousness and our most of the people I've worked with have their own businesses. I mean, some people I have worked with certainly work for other people, but I tend to work a lot with entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, and so this body of work really emerged out of my investigation of how can we grow ourselves into being the people who can be really effective and sustainable and happy in our lives. And that is something that I've been engaged in for a long time. And my experience is that, we all have just so much conditioning, right? And we live, I mean, it might be different where you are in Australia. I don't really know. Because I don't know. I mean, I've had some Australian clients, but I don't want to universalize and act like I know, because I didn't grow up or live in Australia. So I don't know. So I want to just say that as a caveat to all the Australians, take what I'm saying as what I know about the US, and if it applies to you, great. But we live in a pretty oppressive society, in my view. It's very fast-paced. It's focused on production. It's focused on extracting as much as we possibly can get from the earth, from the animals of the earth, and from each other. And we're, and the trees and the plants. I mean, it's just like everything, right? It's an extractive economy that we've been in for a long time, and that has gotten much more intense since the Industrial Revolution. So I'm a little bit of a historicist, so go along here with me for a minute, because I do like to talk about history.
I love that. And this is a great foundation of, what you just said with extracting. We have how much more can we extract that actually then fuels our soul, that alignment with where we have to go next. So,
well, I don't actually think much that we're extracting is in soul alignment. I don't think that's what it's about. It's always been about accumulation, and it's been about power, and it's been about money. And that's the world that we've been living in for quite a while. And so we're running to the end of how much we can do that, because we're on the edge of ecological collapse. And where I live in Northern California, I live where there are wildfires not far away from me. Fortunately, I've never been personally threatened by, where I live, but it's close enough. And, I don't know what's happening in Australia. Well, you had fires, I know, at least a couple of years ago. I don't know if you continue to have fires. We have fires every year, big fires. And so, here we are, right? And we get to, I think it's just, whereas before, kind of waking up to the reality of this was important, it's critical. I know that there was the Code Red for Humanity report that came out in August, which is really just saying, we have got to really make a change. So my perspective on this is that we can't make the changes we need to make being the same people we've been. Because we've been so highly conditioned to live inside of this extractive economy and way of being that it interpenetrates all of our relationships, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with each other, our relationship with the land that we live on. And so we have to really change from the inside. And so the 8 pillars of feminine sovereignty, the first 4 all focus on the inner landscape. It's about our connection with source, our emotional wisdom, our embodiment. You mentioned embodiment earlier, embodiment and physical vitality, and our energetic mastery. And so these are all aspects of who we are as a whole being. And we need to develop our capacities in all of those areas, so that then when we start to turn outward into the outer world, which we do with pillar 5, which is to know your purpose and your contribution, that we have the sense of a kind of inner alignment and inner integrity that enables us to then move out into the world with a lot more wisdom. And then we can move into the final 3 pillars, which are excellent communication, mutually beneficial collaboration, and then a benevolent and wise approach to all of life, which is really the pinnacle that we need to get to, because we need to get there in order to make the changes that we need to make. So feminine sovereignty has developed over these 20 years into these 8 pillars. I used to spend a lot more time on the inner landscape, although in the business coaching that used to be the core of my work, of course, that was a lot about engaging in the outer world and finding our way in the outer world and working with our money consciousness and our relationship to each other and our communication. And so I developed these pillars that came through really, really clear in this particular structure during COVID. And it's because if we try to change things with the same consciousness and mentality and conditioning that we created this with, we're not going to get very far, you know? So we really have to change ourselves on the inner landscape. We have to realize I was doing a pre-record for this conference that I'm doing that you know about, Women Evolving Our World. And I was doing a pre-record with Amanda Scott, who I just love. And she goes, we just don't have time for crap anymore. She's like, every time I get triggered about something, she's like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for my emotional triggers to get in the way of me doing the work I have to do in the world, for me to be able to communicate well, for me to make my contribution. And I think that that's really where we're at, where we have to move from our adolescent state, because certainly here in the United States, we still have had a very adolescent attitude. I mean, that's, adolescence is about this extractive thing, right? It's like here you are, you're learning to move through the world, but you're just kind of taking, and you don't really have a sense of responsibility yet. You don't realize that your ability to take has to be balanced by giving and by responsibility. And that's maturity, right? That's moving to adulthood. And so that's what the pillars are designed to create, is to move us along that path into our true maturity, so that we can be stewards of our planet.
You just brought us some excellent points there that, you talked about the emotional triggers, because that is where we see a lot of it right now, where people are, and it feeds into communication. And for me, communication is the only way to have this embodiment and this understanding of moving forward. The communication with self, the communication with the outer landscape. And you talked about the conditioning beliefs or the conditioning we've had, and also taking responsibility. And this is the breath of fresh air, that it's the awareness that the hundreds of years that have been conditioning, passed down through the generations, and bless those generations. We didn't come with a rule book, so it's not about blaming anything. There is no blame here, but it's just an awareness of, okay, that was the essence of those times that have been passed down to us. And, it's a good thing now to be aware of where do we stand now in this conditioned environment. Where do we stand, and where are we ready to take ownership and responsibility for, what you and I and everyone else would want to contribute first to ourselves, and then in a way that empowers the people outside. And I just feel that the emotional landscape then becomes more of a listening platform, and than a taking and shouting out louder and louder. Nobody's hearing anybody when they're shouting. There is no one who can be the loudest.
It's so true. I know. And unfortunately, again, like here in the States, things have gotten so incredibly polarized. I've never seen this in my life. 6 decades. I've never seen this before, not to this degree, not in this way. And I think it's pretty shocking and disturbing to, a lot of us. And yet here we are, right? And I think that with excellent communication, you're absolutely right. Listening, high quality listening is absolutely vital. The way that I hold excellent communication is there's 3 core parts. One is the ability to speak up from your own truth in a way that can be heard. So it's not about shouting. It's not about shouting down anybody. It's not about making other people wrong. But it is, especially for women and people who've been marginalized, a lot of times our voices have been suppressed. And so there is a need to be able to really express yourself and say what's true for you and stand up for what you believe is right. I think that that's absolutely vital. And then we need to also be able to listen to each other and move outside of our own opinions and our own need to be right, if you will, right? And then really be able to take in, so listen, but also really be able to take in what someone else is saying. And the third part is to be willing to be influenced. It's the willingness to be influenced and to be changed by what you hear from another person. And ideally, if everyone who's in the conversation is doing that, what happens, whether it's 2 people or more, what happens is you create a new understanding that didn't exist before. That's a shared understanding that's created from the listening and the influence. And then people can start to come closer together. But as long as each person is in their polarized position and they're so committed to being right, and they're so committed to that you have to listen to me and I'm not going to listen to you until you listen to me, like that whole thing, it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's just there's no shared understanding at all. And in order for us to make it through this time that we're in now, we have to start developing a lot more shared understanding and be creating collaborations and coalitions that enable us to be able to make some really tough choices, because we do, that are going to affect our lifestyle, that are going to affect our businesses, that are going to affect our relationship to the earth. I mean, things are going to have to really change. And people are very afraid of that. I understand it. I'm afraid of it to a degree, right? I mean, I'm like, whoa, what is it we're going to have to do? I do have a strong optimistic streak, if you will. And I do believe that we can find our way through this if we can develop that ability to hear each other and create a shared understanding. And also if we're willing to tap into source, because I don't actually think that we as kind of isolated human beings are going to be able to make our way out of this. We need support from what I call my upstairs team, if you want to call it source or spirit or God, or for some people it's Jesus or Muhammad or, Buddha, like whatever your understanding is of this creative intelligence that is larger than we are, that manifests in a variety of non-physical ways that are of a higher order than we are, who can help us understand the way out of this conundrum that we're in. And so I think that we also need to be able to partner in that way, beyond just with each other. So that's my personal belief. I don't think I'm the only one who holds it, but I think that that's what we're going to need. I don't think science is going to be able to do it on its own. I think science is helpful and limited.
On that note, there's a few nuggets of gold that you brought up. You mentioned the shocking, and you mentioned, the way that we have to listen, and in order to create a higher, more inspiring and aspiring to platform that includes everybody. So there's no exclusion, but it's inclusion, because at the end of the day, the human being it doesn't exist in isolation. They exist in community. Now, I would love for you to share this through uh, the lens of human design, because for me, that has been an amazing structure to look through and say, huh, I might have all of this human design chart, but I'm particular in some parts of my expression, my awareness, and I've got to understand that through the lens of human design and what you have shared in your videos. So please, could you guide us through this part of leadership through the lens of human design?
Yeah, I would love to. So human design, just so everyone knows, is actually very interpenetrated in the feminine sovereignty pillars. Like all of the pillars are associated with aspects of human design. And human design is an esoteric system that has been around for about 20, 30 years, I guess, about now. And it is, I think of it as a template of an evolving humanity. So, you know what, let me just see. So for those of you who may not be familiar with it, this is what a body graph looks like. This is what a human design chart looks like. So this is my particular human design. And everyone has the same picture here. What's different is what's colored in and what's not colored in. But everybody has these numbers over here, and then everybody has the same picture, right? The whole.
Right.
And so that the body graph gives us an understanding about the human energy system and how it functions, and what the kind of what the different energies are, the qualities of the different energies are. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say it's a template of an evolving humanity is, for example, multinational capitalism isn't on the chart.
Right.
Massive war isn't on the chart. Sex trafficking isn't on the chart. Okay, racism isn't on the chart. Misogyny, right? It doesn't even exist on the chart. So all of these things are not part of where we're going as an evolving humanity, right? Mm-hmm. We're evolving out of those. Those are all aspects of a dominating system, right? An oppressive system, which came out of empire. Really, it's came out of the Roman Empire. I mean, right. That's where it came from. And we're still living with the legacy of that, thousands of years later. And so what human design does is it shows us the lower expressions. So in addition to saying, okay, certain things are just really not in our evolutionary path at all. But then other aspects, each aspect of the chart, so there's 9 centers, 36 channels and 64 gates, plus that's not even all of the aspects of the chart. So there's over 100 different archetypes. And all of them have what I think of them as having 3 expressions. One is like the awakened, and that's where we're going, is the awakened expression of all of the different energies. But then there's the shadow aspect, where we use the power of that energy, but we use it based in a fear-based mindset that leads us to want to manipulate and control without power. Okay. So, and then there's the disempowered aspect, which is where we don't have access to the power of that energy, like at all. Okay. So, just as an example, so in my chart, I have the gate 39. So the gate 38, I want to talk about. So the gate 38, it's known as the Martin Luther King gate because in traditional human design, it was called the fighter, and it was the energy of what is worth fighting for. Now, in quantum human design, which my teacher has created, quantum human design, just kind of evolved the system, she calls it the visionary leader. Yeah. And I have that in my chart. And so you can express that energy as being somebody who just wants to fight about things, just being the fighter, just being the warrior. I'm just going to fight, I think this is important, so I'm going to fight for it, right? So that's the kind of shadow aspect where you're expressing the power of the energy, but you're doing it to try to manipulate and control based in fear so that you can feel safe. Mm-hmm. The disempowered aspect is like, I don't want to fight. Fighting is bad. I don't want to, no, I just want everybody to get along. I just want, things to be peaceful. Can't we just all just get along?
That's me.
Where we like conflict with each other, right? So that's the disempowered aspect. Whereas the awakened aspect is there are things that are worth putting my energy into. I have a vision of a better world. I have a vision about how we could get together and we could communicate better. And yes, sometimes we're not going to be on the same page. Sometimes we're going to feel like we're in conflict. Sometimes we're going to feel like, if I get what I want, you're not going to get what you want. But we can move beyond that through this kind of active, this listening and this influencing. We can go together into a place where we can actually create something new together. So for me, that's the visionary leader energy is doing that, right? And that's why it's called the Martin Luther King Gate, because he was visionary in that way, right? According to his time, right? We're in a different time now, but according to that time. So that's just one aspect of over 100 different aspects of the chart. But it gets to show you, like you were just saying, I think you were saying, oh, I resonate with that more disempowered. I just want everybody to get along, right? Well, so then, like, Rebeccah, you get to look at that and go, oh, okay, well, so why is it that why would I feel that way? What happened in my life experience, that made me feel like I just want to do that? That's also based in fear, right?
Yeah.
And then I get to go, okay, let me just process that a bit and see, do I have an investment that wants to keep me, in that peacemaking role? And let me just say, there's nothing wrong with peacemaking. I'm not saying that, but peacemaking at the cost of telling the truth, of actually talking about things that are hard, of being able to meet challenging situations together.
Yeah.
We don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah.
We don't. So then you get to practice going, okay, I actually want to lead more into this visionary leader. And then you get to go, well, how would I do that different? I don't know. Let me experiment. Let me try something out. Like, and where maybe I wouldn't have said anything before, maybe I'll say something, but I'll say it gently, I'll say it kindly, but I'll say the truth instead of just being quiet because I'm afraid somebody else is going to react.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? That's why it's an evolutionary process for us. And every single aspect of the chart helps us to see, we get to self-assess and go, oh, wow, I think there's another one, the gate 51, the gate of shock. I used to receive shocking experiences and I used to provide shocking experiences to others. And then when I learned about that, I was like, oh, actually, the more awakened expression of that energy is initiation into higher consciousness. And then I went, oh, well, I kind of do that too, but I would get mixed up sometimes with the shock thing. And now I'm always like, okay, how do I express the higher aspect of that? How can I bring myself into higher consciousness? How can I do that for my clients? How can I do that for, like, in my videos that you watch, right? And so I'm always looking at how can I use that energy, but make sure I'm channeling it in a way that's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to hurt me. It's going to hurt other people. But sometimes initiations into higher consciousness are disruptive, right? They disrupt our patterns. We go, oh, I need to think about that differently. I need to do something different. So there is an element of disruption.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be negative, and it doesn't have to be like hurtful, right? You don't want to do it with I'm going to shock you so you wake up. So like 1970s and 80s. Some people still do it, but I'm just saying it's kind of an old paradigm. We don't need to do that. We don't need that kind of pain to wake up. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people don't wake up until they have more pain, but yeah. So that's just a couple of examples, Rebeccah. Is that helpful? About how
you know what, that was it speaks into today's times. It's interesting when we're talking about conditioning and these paradigms that are old paradigms that they're thinking fighting your way out. And just like you mentioned about the gate of the visionary, I have that gate, and I find that in these last 2, 3, 4 years, I feel called to rise above that and just step up, and hold these platforms, if not anything else. Because one of the things you talked about was the colors of the charts and when they're not colored in, and you talk about definitions and defined color in the centers and undefined color in the centers. And I have an undefined throat chakra, and you have a defined throat chakra, and so tell us how during this week, perhaps, because this is an amazing week of, honestly, there are lots of noise going on around, there are planes going on, everything, but that's all right. We can move on above this. It's, this week we talk about through the lens of human design, which embodies so many really sacred aspects of the human energy, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about the retrograde of the planets, and I believe your latest video talks about the retrograde palooza, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, what do we do with this? How do we, what is it in, in sort of like in a way that people can understand, the viewers can understand, this week, especially when they find themselves being pulled in different directions. How do we view it through the lens of human design?
Well, so the way that I think about this, so the Mercury just went retrograde on Monday, and all of the outer planets have been retrograde all month, and they will continue to be retrograde until the middle of next month. We do have Pluto going direct. Pluto's been retrograde for a long time. Pluto's going direct actually on the first day of my conference. And then Mercury is retrograde for about 3 weeks. It's always retrograde for about 3 weeks. So that's just kind of the technical part of it. So the way that I really think of this, and I don't know if it's specifically human design, I think it's astrological as well, but is that the way I'm holding it, let me just put it that way, is all of the outer planets and now Mercury are asking us to take a really good look in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And they're going, okay, go back, reflect on your life, reflect on how you've been, reflect on what you've been creating and not creating, reflect on how you've been feeling and not feeling, reflect on your relationships. I mean, it's just like one thing after the next, right? It's just really take some time rather than just barreling forward, which is what we're doing all the time, right? Barreling forward and not really paying all that much attention to a lot of things because we're just trying to be productive and we're just trying to make money and we're just trying to, fit into the system and all of that, right? And so when all the planets are retrograde, they're kind of like, you might be feeling a little bit like you're moving through molasses because it's like, I'm having a little bit of a hard time moving forward. And that's because the planets are retrograde. But you're not supposed to be moving forward so much. And it's interesting for me, Rebeccah, because I'm doing this conference, right? And so we're enrolling the conference right now, and we're in these retrogrades. But when I really dove into it, what I saw was that, for example, Pluto's in the gate 61, which is the gate of inspiration. It's right here, plugged right into super consciousness. Pluto's been there for a long time, and Pluto's been saying, are you paying attention to your intuition? Are you paying attention to go back and look at how much you have or have not paid attention to your intuition? Right?
Perfect.
And this is an example, right?
Yeah.
And so let me just see. I'm sorry, I don't have it all super fresh in my mind. Hold on just for a second.
Yes, absolutely.
On my notes from when I did that video the other day.
On the gate of intuition. My goodness, do we not need intuition right now? No. This is
okay. So let me just take a look here. So okay, so Saturn, I think that's August. Okay. Saturn is okay, Jupiter's in the 49, is retrograde in the gate 49. The 49 is the cosmic revolutionary. Okay. It's the energy of revolution, and it has to do, it's tribal energy. So it has to do with our relationships and the people who are close in. It has to do with intimacy and partnership. And so we get to go back and look, okay, how have we been in our relationships? How have we been with our intimacy with our partners? And do we need a revolution? Like, do we need to really shake things up and make it be different? Like, go back and look. Because that's what retrogrades are all about. They're like, go back and look, review it, right? And then when you go back and look, you're like, well, what do I need to rejuvenate? What do I need to restore? What do I need to renovate? Right? It's all these rewords, right? And so it's a very contemplative time rather than so much about action. But to me, that's a lot of what I was saying before about how we have to grow ourselves into being different people in order to create the changes that we know we need to create. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, part of it is taking a look in the mirror. Like, we have to, those first pillars are all about really looking inside and being really honest with yourself, like radical honesty about how you've been and how do you want to be and what do you really want to give your energy towards. Because we have to break our patterns, right? This conditioning that we've been in has just keep running us a certain way. We have to break out of that. So a time of reflection, and all the outer planets are going, stop! Take another look.
And don't be a perfectionist. That was something that you talked about with this, recognizing the pattern and recognizing that I've got to get it right. I've got to get it right.
Yeah, that's because I think it's the suns in the 18, which is the gate of correction or the realignment. Yeah, and that energy can definitely be perfectionist, and it can be very harsh, like to yourself and others. Like, aren't you gonna you didn't get it right? I mean, but it's a beautiful energy when you take all that judgment out of it, and then you just go, oh, how do we actually like I think if we were really like honest with ourselves, radically honest with ourselves, we could use that energy to take a look at how we're using energy on our planet. And you could do this in your own home. You could just look at what is the pattern of how I use energy in my own home. Perfect. Do I want to keep using energy that way? Like, I know my child and me, we don't use our dryer. Like, hardly ever. Like, when it gets to be really cold in the winter and hanging things up doesn't work, we'll probably use our dryer again, but only when we have to. We'll hang clothes dry in our home because we don't want to use that. We don't have to use that power, so we're not going to use that power. So we're going to align our like the pattern of our energy to be more in alignment with our values. But then, of course, we need to do that on a global scale too. Like, how are we using our energy? Where are we getting our energy from? How do we create an aligned way of creating energy, receiving energy from the sun, and then using it? Like, so that, do you see what I mean? Like, any one of these aspects of the human design chart can be used in a beneficial way or in a not so beneficial way. It's just all about how we express them.
You've actually fed in. You've fed a lot into, what I believe in this quantum energy design, where it's also using quantum energy. It's like, it's the resources that are readily available to us, and, our reflection on using those resources, but in a way that fuels us and gives us, ownership and responsibility of how we're using it, and what we need to go forward with. And one of the things,
our planet.
Right. And it makes me think that when we're looking at the mirror and we're seeing all of these reflections and we're seeing these patterns, I love how you share that this is where we go into being curious and asking that, what is it? What would it be like if I could look at something in a certain way? Asking those curiosity questions. I do believe that curiosity is a gateway to innovation and, just evolving our own personal selves through the lens also of curiosity and wonder, like a child would wonder. But it's what do we call it? Childlike wonder, but it's not, where we use childlike wonder and imagination to just ask those questions. So you had a few questions that I believe you put in one of your videos of this. How do we then, as we're being reflective in this pattern, then we go to, okay, let me just think about this. How what can it involve out of this? You had a specific, it's simple. It's very simple. And it's on one of your videos.
Yeah, it's the one about generative questions. It has to do with sacral authority. But generative questions are good for all types, really, because generative questions, just so that everybody understands this, are questions that we don't try to answer, but we're putting out into the quantum field, or we're putting out to God or to source, right? We're throwing it out there and we're saying, I wonder how we can get out of this conundrum that we're in. Like, let's say let's bring it home. Like, let's say you have a challenge in your relationship. Like, you just keep fighting with your partner, or you love each other, but you keep fighting. And you're like, I wonder how we can be more loving to each other. I wonder what keeps stimulating us to fight with each other. I wonder how I can break my habit of being annoyed when, they do this. I wonder how we can create our lives differently so that we can have more love between us and we can share more love between us, right? So those aren't questions that you're necessarily trying to answer, but they're more about, at least initially, you're just kind of putting it out there and you're opening up possibilities. Because if you're in a crisis situation like that and you're trying to think it through with your head, you're kind of locked in because you're still in this pattern, right? You need to open up the pattern. You need to open up the possibilities. And the best way to do that is not to try and figure it out with your head. One of the things we say with human design is, figuring things out with your head is very limited. Don't ever make decisions with your head. But that's the whole thing. And so you're opening up possibilities, and then you just are with it for a while, and you allow yourself to receive some divine inspiration. You allow your body wisdom to be able to be starting to direct you in certain ways. You allow yourself to be influenced by something maybe you never saw before because you were so locked into thinking you needed to be right, and it's the other person's fault. And if they would just stop doing this, then everything would be. But if you're like, I wonder, it moves you out of that. And then when you're in this other place, you're more observant and you're more open to possibility. And all of a sudden you go, oh, I could just, instead of when, so-and-so does that, I could just go into the other room for a little while and be quiet.
It's simple.
And I could just do that. And then I could, do something else for a little bit. And then I could come back and then I could be like, okay, yeah, I heard what you said. All right. And then we could have a conversation instead of me reacting because it was annoying and getting back at you. Right? And all of a sudden that possibility might occur to you where if you're locked in, it's like not even possible.
Yes, and this is where the intuition and creative imagination builds up and into telling another story, right? And how do we tell a new story we are all so hungry for new story. And so, I have so enjoyed this conversation, Maggie. And so would you please tell our viewers about the upcoming conference, which is October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Yeah, and I have a link that I can put into the comments and about this conference where they can find out more. And so tell us more. And yeah.
So this conference emerged out of my work with feminine sovereignty. I had the idea for it actually a couple of years ago, but it kept not being the right time. And then I realized early in the summer that October was going to be the right time. This is one of the things human design teaches is right timing.
Yeah.
Because even the best thing at the wrong time kind of falls flat. And so when you have the right thing at the right time, it just works, right? And plus you have a lot of energy for it because the cosmic flow is also supporting that. So I really felt that come in. And I was like, oh, now's the right time. And I see this as possibly becoming an annual event. I feel like there could be so many different ways of focusing this. So it's called Women Evolving Our World, Feminine Sovereignty, Leadership, and the Right Use of Power. And what my vision for it is to bring, there's 19 of us, I think, no, 19 of us, 18 speakers and me, to talk about different aspects of our work in relation to the 8 pillars of feminine sovereignty, which, as I said, is kind of like a pathway to developing ourselves to be sovereigns of our own lives and then also stewards of our planet. And so I reached out to a number of friends and colleagues and asked them to come and share about their aspects of their work and share their wisdom, speaking into these different aspects of feminine sovereignty. And one of the things that's really different about this conference is that it's going to be live, and it's going to be very interactive. And there's opportunities for you to interact both in each session and then at the end of the day. And this might be late enough for the Australians to come because it's at 4 p.m. Pacific. So I think that's like 9 p.m. your time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it would be time that you could come in and participate in. And those are facilitated conversations with some of the presenters. Right. And then in addition to that, we're going to have a Slack account. We have a Slack account. We're just setting it up now so that you can go in and interact with each other. And I didn't want this just to be another one of those events that's just, recordings and talking heads and you don't get to, really interact with anybody. What I really want is for us to be able to communicate with each other. I want to hear from participants. The presenters want to hear from participants. We want to be creating a synergy so that we can be developing at heartstorming together and opening up, being curious together and opening up possibilities. So this is not meant to be definitive. We're not going to give you the, ABC 1, 2, 3, go and blow up your business in the next month. Like it's not that at all. It's really about opening up. Wow, I've done this in my work, and this is kind of how I have experienced it. Now I want to give you some of that so you can try it out, and then you can see what it's like for you. And then we get to share about that because I think that's how we're going to be opening up new possibilities at a larger scale, is when we come to things with more of an open mind and an open heart, and we're willing to be influenced by each other. Like I'm there to learn from the presenters and from the participants as much as anybody else is. I want to learn about aspects of feminine sovereignty that I haven't even thought about already. And so that's really the intention of it, is to provide really high quality experiential interactive sessions, and for us to all get to connect more with each other. And it'll also help participants connect with each other in a more horizontal way. Often it's kind of a one-way communication, and I wanted it to do it differently. And for me, this is very in alignment with the pillars of feminine sovereignty. So the form is expressing the values of feminine sovereignty. And the speakers are incredible. I've done some pre-records with people who are either doing extra sessions or who couldn't make it because of the timing of it. So those are starting to come out on Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there'll be pre-records. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there's live sessions. And we also decided to have recordings from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day of those sessions. So you Australians can go and watch them. People in Europe can go and watch them during your daylight hours instead of at some crazy time when you would. Although for a lot of you, for you Australians, you could start at the, well, no, if the recordings weren't available, you couldn't, but it means you could. So, starting in the morning, you could start watching them. So, because I wanted to make this more, available to people around the world. And recordings, of course, will be available for sale too, along with a bunch of bonuses presenters. So if you want this for your own library, you don't have to watch it all so fast. You're welcome to do that as well. But I did want it just to be something that people could find a way to access and participate in. That's the other reason for the Slack, so that people around the world can come and participate that way. And it's not just during the live sessions. So
this is just, I felt, goosebumps all the way. It's just like, where do we start? How do we start? And you've just, to me, this is brilliant leadership. And so on that note, I'd like to urge everyone, if you're catching the replay, please pop in some comments that perhaps Maggie or I can follow up with you to direct you to this conference, because I do believe that, as you mentioned, without this, platform of open communication, of, leveraging our experience and learning from others, isn't that the way forward? Isn't that the empowered leader, right? And I just feel that we all got to be leaders in ourselves in order to be leaders outside of ourselves. And I, for one, I'm really looking forward to that. I feel like I've been learning so much, and I've learned a lot. But I tell you what, we weren't born on this planet to say we've learned all we have to learn. And I think we can all contribute to each other's learning in order to go forward. I see this as a valuable piece right now, and the month of October is a valuable month to focus on direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And I just want to underscore that my intention for this conference is that we are going to create new shared understandings that are beyond what any of us individually have to provide so far. Like I was talking about excellent communication, where we're willing to be excellent, so that we speak up, ideally so we can be heard, we really listen to each other, and then we can create new shared understandings. And so that's really my intention with this. It's, everybody, is an expert, right? I mean, we all are, technically in our fields. And, that's not enough. I mean, it's like we have to start talking to each other, and we have to, I think it's in the synergy of that we're going to be coming up with more solutions, and different solutions than the ones we've had so far.
Yes, and collaborative understanding. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Maggie, so much for your time. And I do believe this is the end of your day, and I've had a fabulous, fascinating conversation with you. And, let's take this forward with this energy that we've created in here to provide synergy and evolved understanding moving on. Yeah. So thank you so much, Maggie. So if you just hold on a little bit, and I can say goodbye to you properly. And
I just want to say to people who are watching the replay, thank you for being here and for listening. And do come and connect with me. Find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram under Sovereignty by Design. And I also have my YouTube channel that Rebeccah has been working on my YouTube. So you just search for my name, Maggie Ostara, and they'll come up.
Yes, I'll put those links in as well for you, Maggie, because I do think that the more we follow and hear the various fields we come from with our expertise, the more we have a combined, evolved understanding. So I'll put those links in for our viewers as well to follow. And so thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with us. And it's been, I said to Maggie, it'll be about 40 minutes, but this has been fascinating conversation. And I didn't want to miss this opportunity to share you. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So I'll end the broadcast now.